Um, Carson McCullers, Reflections in a Golden Eye, is my first book by her. She wrote another one, her first novel, at the age of, I think, 23, pretty young, uh, especially for a young kind of woman in the 40s. That was just, 'cause she was born in 1917 and passed away sadly too young at the age of 50 in 1967. I'm not quite sure what the exact cause of death was. Like I said, I'm kind of still kind of in the dark of the majority of like the salient points of her life, but I do know that I think she had, I don't know if it was a tumor of some kind, but I think she was a lifelong struggling alcoholic addiction, and she struggled with addiction, and that could have had something to do with it, but don't quote me on that. But yes, so Carson McCullers was a Southern Gothic author, kind of in the vein of Flannery O'Connor, or who she probably reminds me of the most, with a hint of like William Faulkner. There's some other ones, but plus later kind of people who've a little bit kind of closer to modernity with like Cormac McCarthy or maybe a bit of John Williams. But yes, so The Heart is a Lonely Hunter is more of about a book about outcasts in a small southern town, and her second novel, The Reflections in a Golden Eye, which I'm trying to review, and I have some notes here just so you know like why I'm looking down at my phone. I just have some notes on here that's easier to access than me writing it down, but I have it just the major points of it, because it is a lot is going on in this novel. It's not quite as long as some of she has some pretty, her first novel was kind of that's why I didn't want to go for it just yet, because I heard it's a little bit long. It's like probably twice as long as this one. This one was like maybe 4-hour read, and it concerns a similar cast of misfits and outcasts, not necessarily outcasts, but the kind of subject of like voyeurism and repressed tendencies, and keeping things under wraps, and keeping things like in a very like in a like repressed kind of southern army brat town. And I just wanted to give a little quote by McCullers where she says, as she speaks about her motive to write the book, she said that I am so immersed in my characters that their motives are my own. When I write about being a thief, I become one. When I write about Captain Pendleton, I become a homosexual man. I become the characters I read about. I bless the Latin poet Terence, who said, "Nothing is alien to me," or "Nothing human is alien to me." So that's kind of the starting point for giving you an idea of how she's able to kind of immerse herself into the deep psychology of these characters in a way that other writers have done, maybe taking some roots from the realists, I guess, of Dostoevsky's time, or the Russian realists. I do find some parallels in the fact that a lot of the social hierarchies of the time too, like of the southern class of being upper class. I see this not only with Flannery O'Connor, but just various. There's another person who pointed out that it might have been Faulkner, but like the fact that there was the you kind of almost like in the similar sense that the Russian oligarchy had, maybe not, but maybe the Tsarist kind of had generals and stuff that were like high class, in the same sense that even up until the 40s, I think the South had kind of an entrenched kind of thing with having servants, and even after even probably up until the civil rights. But so this actually takes place a little bit in the future, because it says it takes place in the late 40s, and it's basically talking about the 6 main characters, which is Major Weldon Pendleton, and his wife Lenora, Lieutenant Colonel Morris Langdon, and then his wife Allison Langdon, and then their house servant named Anacleta, and then Private LG, which is hard for me to kind of hear at first, because I heard like when people are saying it sounded like they're saying LG, but then I've also heard it spelt out like LGELLGEE. So yeah, so L.G. Williams is kind of the underlying kind of almost like a ghostly. He's almost like a bit of a narrator himself because he's very a lot of the voyeurism is coming from him because he's a very curious kind of guy that has a lot. He's a young man, obviously, and he's been set out to post on to help with the stables, to be to kind of just help out the captain and Captain Penderton. I'm sorry, Penderton. Yes. Okay. So he's set up to help them, and I will admit I got kind of lost in exactly what was going on and what was going on with who. So at first I thought it was Captain Penderton was, he's a repressed homosexual, and he's keeping all those kind of feelings withdrawn inside him and like held tightly under wraps, clutching onto those things because he's really he's risking a lot because his career he's been in a very astute, very scholarly too. Something I think the book makes it clear that he's also like a pretty masterful, not just in like the field tactics and all the army kind of I don't know all the lingo, but all the kind of his days on the on the force of doing stuff. He's not just a kind of he hasn't just done the disciplinary kind of physical aspects of being in warfare, although I'm not sure to what extent, but he also has a lot of bureaucratic kind of scholarly kind of things. He's able to write off statistics in kind of a savant type way, but he doesn't have. But aside from that, he keeps these emotions like he's very like withholds all those because they would ruin his career. Like people would this is the 40s, like even probably until the 60s. I think until the sexual revolution did this stuff, and even still it kind of you have a lingering residual kind of I guess masculine crisis still today. So a little bit of that kind of remind me of Patricia Highsmith's The Talented Mr. Ripley, in the sense of all these characters kind of mainly Ripley trying to kind of keep that homosexuality intact. And so but yeah, so basically what it's so Captain Williams, or yeah, he Private Williams is basically he's given in exchange for his stay a pro bono. He's like allowed to stay with them, and then this is when he falls in love with Lenora, his wife. So Lenora is basically here's where it gets confusing. So he falls in love with her because he kind of stumbles on her riding. I think she's naked and she's walking naked, or maybe she's riding the horse. And the horse in the horse stables, Firebird is like kind of a thing, a symbol of like I guess different things in throughout the novel, like different inciting incidents and different underlying subtext, and like that's given a voice through this horse. That's kind of another passive kind of thing in the same way, maybe off the top of my head, of like Balthazar, I think, the book, that French movie by, I think it's by Luc Besson, and it's, it's been a while since I've seen it, but it's like kind of a similar kind of narrative of like the horse being kind of a little bit like Prince Mishkin from Dostoevsky, like kind of a flat arc that's kind of where a bunch of stuff is happening around the horse, and the relationship to everything else. I felt a little bit like that with this. Obviously, this was years before that movie came out, but yeah. So he's smitten with her. That's what Williams is now smitten with Lenora. I'm sorry. Wait. Yeah. Okay. So basically. So he's continuing on, spying on them against their things, and then they, and even though weirdly enough they have separate bedrooms, so like the Penderson's marriage is like pretty fractious at this point, especially because obviously he's keeping this information withheld from her. It's like very intimate, and he's very also Lenore's prone to kind of histrionics. In fact, at some point in the novel, Carson McCullers says that people even guess that she might be a little bit dumb, like a little bit of a. There's a specific name for it that was kind of in vogue at the time, I think, to kind of say that somebody was. She was a bit on the stupid side, or that she was a foolish woman, like that she wasn't that intelligent. But there's other things that she does that might suggest otherwise. So it's a little bit held. I like how that's kind of not entirely certain, because in that case some of her antics and outbursts might have some more root to them. And in another case, like Pemberton's own, his own repressed tendencies might very much make his own outbursts and outrage in general very understandable as well. Like, because he's reaching middle age, he's never told a soul about this, and he's forced to keep it all inside. And so so then there's the other side of the coin, which is the major claim. So the major Captain the Langdon. So Allison Langdon, so Lieutenant Colonel Langdon is kind of one step up. I think he's like talking about how that Pemberton is like kind of in a little bit of competition to get that one stripe. I think there's like a difference between rank, and to get that kind of rank, that one up, and that one day he might even be a lieutenant general or like a general of some kind. So he's stuck kind of wondering if he'll ever even make it to that point, because he's like kind of so unsure of himself at this point in his career. So there's a lot of doubts as to whether. But there's Allison Williams. I'm sorry. There's Langdon. There's Allison Langdon, and she's especially depressed due to her. And again, this is why it was kind of hard for me to figure out, because there's a lot of different characters. There's six. Maybe not all that much, but yeah. So there's Allison Williams is in her own kind of dark kind of night of the soul, because she's lost her own like a kid and in childbirth. Like she's and given a miscarriage, and she hasn't really had she's not really sure if she's even capable of having kids at this point in her life, and so she has her own doubts, and they basically his husband, or her husband, I'm sorry, Morris is basically having an affair with Lenora. So Lenora's kind of, and Weldon Pemberton knows of this, and he's kind of just keeps it. He doesn't really question it. He's like not that jealous even. Like he's like just kind of like, maybe even a part of him is relieved at some point. Maybe this is just me putting two and two together without really any impetus for this. But a part of him is relieved, maybe, that now he's kind of off the cuff. Like she's getting her maybe satisfaction from another party, I guess, and he's friends. He kind of complicated friendship that he has with the lieutenant colonel. So the Langdons are at some point there's another inciting incident where Allison actually, due to her grief and a number of other things, she ends up like mutilating herself by cutting off her nipples and her breasts with a shears in the shed, and it's like a very kind of gruesome incident that people try to keep on. That was after the death of their baby, and a few years back, and now they actually keep it kind of, they don't really talk about it, but it's not like something that the town kind of knows about, is complicit in knowing, but nobody really talks about it a lot. So it's like another thing kind of kept in the dark, and it's like I just goes to how like intense and like severe that grief was that she was, that was kind of all, the almost like the only way she saw it as expressing it, like the only way. So like it really does show like how much was going on in this household. So anyway, so then basically, there's Pemberton begins to get Private Williams, the young soldier, to clean up some different leaves and all the different stuff during fall time, and it's like very crisp autumn. They keep mentioning that at this point it's like starting to get kind of the incipient kind of cold nature, or the cold kind of is coming on slowly, and in the horse and stables there he sees he starts spying on Lenora more and is smitten with her still, and then there's a party that they start to plan, and then at this point, this is where the Allison Langdon and her house servant Anacleto, and he is a very flamboyant, very eccentric kind of guy that is a Filipino guy that's there, and he's like, I feel like a lot of the comedic relief is like kind of placed on him. in a way that's like it seems like a very much needed comedic kind of relief at some points, because he's very not like he's not like a stooge. He's not like totally inept, and like he has a certain aspect of kind of foolishness to him, but he's like he is caring, and he cares about the Langdons and whoever's he's still fulfilling his duty. He's the only one that Allison can actually confide with, because her husband is off kind of philandering, and he doesn't really seem to be taking this marriage very seriously, and her none less her grief too. So basically, he ends up Anacleto is he's part of him is like kind of fails in doing stuff like he's trying to learn French to impress kind of people, and he's kind of a lot of the kind of almost the like he's like seems to be embarrassment, and at certain points they joke about him, and that I think the major at some point opines that he would actually be a good soldier, like he would actually be better than like 90% of his unit, because like his whole like battalion or whatever he's like tasked under, I think with a major it's like a battalion, it's not, these people would actually like he would rather have him at the head of that, but anyway, so then there's the incident with the horse, which is basically Williams starts. So he's Pennerton. He's taking Fireball, his horse, off on a little ride, and he's kind of like a little bit. The horse is almost like a symbol of like an extension of all the things and the repressed things that he can't deal with. So he's like riding on this horse, and he's not really. He's shown to be a little bit almost in kind of inept in the horse and like how it works, and like having the horse kind of taking him away. Like he's not really experienced at like at taking reps and taking a charge and like piloting this horse in a way, like he's like kind of a little bit untried in this skill. So he actually passes by Williams, Private Williams, that is naked again, just buck naked, wandering around. Another very kind of, which causes him to lose it. Like he's like so much, because he's like again like in love with Williams, and like seeing this almost seems like a taunt. Like it's like seems to be like a thing like you are everything that I can't have in front of me, and then he just loses it. Like he just like starts beating his horse, and then starts like breaking down in tears, and then so he's William appears, and he's like still in the nude, like unashamed, and then ends up taking the horse out of there, and then Williams goes back to the stables, and then starts like kind of like tending to its wounds, and then the big party that's supposed to be happening with a bunch of food, and that that people are kind of make out to be a pretty big dinner party, because they've had a lot of like casual moments so far in the book where they're kind of playing blackjack and having some liquor and having a good time, and kind of drinking up and just having casual kind of fun, but they haven't had really all that much beyond like casual dinners and stuff with like, so they're trying to kind of throw a party to kind of get everyone back together again, and this is supposed to be that time, and then because Captain Murray is Winecheck, Allison is friends with him and ends up staying home with them, and instead of going to the party, and then but he also hears that he was kicked out of the army because of I guess because of his superior officers like didn't like him, and like kind of unfairly kind of harassed him, and so basically the Pennertons go back to the party, and then Lenora finds out what happens through her maid, and then kind of is like is very infuriated with her husband for like beating a horse. So because she prizes the horse more, has a more kind of intimate kind of relationship, weirdly enough, with the horse than and is able to kind of like have like that special I guess horse whispering kind of nature, for lack of a better phrase. So anyway, things start to, spoiler alert, get pretty heated as there's another kind of episode with the following this party that Pennerton himself starts to become more and more into Williams and starts to stalk him around the stable slash farm area, and he sees her leaving his wife's room or Allison's room, and is like again like very like is freaking out at Lenora and says like, or Allison, I'm sorry, and like that Allison's going insane and that she needs to go to the sanitarium or sanatorium. I'm sorry, I can't speak, but and then so Anacleto, they're basically kind of almost out of abruptly. Allison ends up having a heart attack, and then Anacleto is like kind of seems to be very broken down, and then disappears out soon after she dies. And one last night on this is the last kind of episode. Pennertons, they look out the window and see Williams outside the house, and he believes that he's coming to see him, and then ends up going into Lenora's room instead. And then he sees her, the private, looking at her, not touching, not doing anything, just looking, again, that voyeuristic kind of thing, and ends up shooting him, like in a fit. It kind of just like ends up like in a daze, kind of shooting him in the head, and then he's obviously dead. And yeah, it just ends with like that on that note, and like she ends up, Lenora wakes up in sobs, and yeah, that's like kind of where it leaves off. And with that kind of, there was a preface to this with a quote McCullers indicates at the beginning quite clearly that there is, but well, actually more kind of alluding and not as kind of indirectly rather. She says that there is like in this place, in this specific little area on this farm area property, there was a murder some years ago. So it's like talking almost in a legend kind of way. I thought it was gonna, when it said that at the beginning, I thought it was like kind of a Italo Calvino kind of almost like a false start, or like putting you into a mode of like thinking of one way and then it was going to tell a different story. But it did tell a story. It did tell that very same story. It just took a very interesting way and lengthy time to get there, but on a definitely not misspent. I felt like it was a engaging novel. So yeah, I definitely recommend Reflections in a Golden Eye, and it definitely spawned me turn me onto her other work, and I will try to as soon as I can. Maybe not this year, because we are in the last few weeks of December, and I have a little bit of time, a little bit more. I think I might even be able to break 200 this year, and again, that's kind of a needless kind of tooting my own horn, and it's not really necessary for me to mention that, but I guess I do have made some other videos like saying that I was like reading what I read in 2023, I think, and yeah, I'd like to do that again, just to kind of take inventory, because sometimes that's another way of me being able to review stuff by just saying a quick little blurb about it, rather than me having to be like, oh, I have to be a 20-minute thing of me rambling on about books. Like, it could be like, okay, well, I read this book, and this is what I thought about it in a very quick nutshell, because even that would take forever. But anyway, so that is all I have, and yeah, this short film that I did have in mind, I guess to update, there is a SD card problem, I guess first world problem with that, and this probably is it right here, and I have to figure out how to retrieve the data by getting software that will investigate more into, actually without wiping the card, because I really don't want to wipe in the whole thing, but I do have all the footage on there. Not that I would have gotten to it immediately, I would probably kept putting it off until God knows when, but at least I would be able to have a place to start if I get that figured out. So anyway, that is all I have for today, and thanks for watching.